Welcome to the panel, which is about women and women's leadership, education for women in leadership. And I'm honored to be chairing this session for very distinguished guests here. And I would like to introduce them to you first. Jo Nurse. She's the chair on existential threats and risks to all extra working group. WAAS, Strategic Advisor, Interaction Council, and FWAAS. I don't know if I'm producing it correctly. Yeah, fellow WAAS. All right, thank you. And the second distinguished speaker is Thérèse ASSIÉ-LUMUMBA. She's professor at Cornell University, President, Global Africa Comparative and International Education Society, fellow WAAS. And Mila POPOVICH, she's going to join us online. Here she is, welcome. And she's the founder of Evolving Leadership, Director, General Directorate for Interculturalism, Government of Montenegro, Trustee, and WAAS. And our last speaker is Devakanni SUBRAMANIAM. And she is also the CEO of SpellBee International and fellow of WAAS. So thank you for coming. Of course, our main subject is education. So I would like to start with some comments on women's education, because I think it is the most important thing in achieving more and more women in leadership roles. And unfortunately, there are about 119 million girls who are out of education throughout the world, which is a big number which we should fight against. And the first thing that whenever there is a political turmoil, as you know, the first thing that is done is to ban women from education. However, if women are at the table, if women are leaders, then we know that there will be less conflicts and less disturbance of peace. So I would like to ask you, Jo, first to start, and then we will continue.
Thank you, and welcome everyone. I've got 4 questions for the panel and for all of you to reflect on today and to talk amongst each other, and if we've got time to feed back as well. So the first question is, global leadership has failed. It has failed us. Not only with today's challenges, like the pandemic, our climate emergency, further wars, but also for tomorrow's challenges, the existential threats and risks that we face. We do not have the right leadership in place to address these challenges. So the question is, why? What are the root causes? What is it about today's leaders that has failed us? I want us to move beyond just that they're all white men. Okay, it needs to be more than that, because we need to see leadership as a process. It's a process of evolution. It's a process of how we coordinate groups. The purpose of leadership is about security, making sure that we're all safe, including our survival, but it's also about coordinating however many billion of us on this planet so that we work together and achieve that survival collectively. That ultimately is the purpose of leadership, whether you look at it in group animals or across history and anthropological processes in terms of what leadership is for. What's the purpose of leadership? Let's go right to the root cause of that, because then it helps us understand why we failed in our current leadership. Some of it is because we feel unsafe. Collectively, the pandemic made us feel very insecure. We didn't know what was happening. We felt our lives at threat. All the other threats, climate, wars, they make us feel unsafe. When we feel unsafe, we want a big leader. We want a dominant leader. This is very much wired into our DNA. This is early leadership was about having a big leader that made us feel safe, the chief. Okay, but chiefs are only good at certain things. And actually leadership is much more complex than that. So understanding the root causes of why we're choosing the wrong leaders is useful for us to then identify what sort of leaders do we need? What type of leadership do we need for the future? So the first question is to understand the root causes, but really understand and to go into the depth, talk about it. What is toxic masculinity about? Why are women not included? Why are other diverse populations not included in leadership? We need to understand that to actually have the right leadership for the future. Okay, the second area then is for women in leadership. What are the remaining challenges? We've addressed a lot of the gap in terms of women in education, but there's a huge gap still in terms of women in positions of power and in terms of making decisions in government. So what are those barriers? What are those challenges? And I'd like to hear from all of you. Carry on the discussion as well as we go forward. What are those barriers? And to understand as well, I know we've got men in the audience who can also contribute to that discussion. This is about making sure everyone's voice is included, because we need everyone's voice to create a safe and secure and flourishing world going forward into the future. So then the third area I'd like us to explore together is about what type of leaders and leadership do we actually need to match the challenges, to match to meet the challenges that we face, the multitude of existential threats and risks, yet alone the day-to-day kind of polycrisis that we're faced within any community or any country. We need a different type of leadership. And I propose, and we might not have time to talk about it fully today, but something called planetary leadership. And this is about actually looking at first principles. What type of leadership do we actually need? It's not about men and women, ultimately. It's about being human. And for our human survival, our human security, we need a new type of leadership. What does that look like? Have that discussion. And then the last question, the fourth area, is really to reflect on what's the role of education, the education system that exists now, but also the future of education, especially with online learning, open access, and education is going to transform significantly into the future. So how can education help all of us create this new leadership that's needed for the future, including greater representation of women and diverse populations, so that we actually have a true leadership that's based upon everyone in this planet. So what does that look like? So those are my questions to reflect on. I think it's time to hand over to our next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you very much for these questions that I'm sure we are going to explore throughout. So our next speaker is Devakanni. Would you like to start, please?
Greetings to you all. Very happy to be in this forum and very happy to see future leaders here. And I could see equally many women here, girls. First, I would like to make it one very important point. Men or women all need to get trained in leadership. There is a statement like this, according to the McKinsey report, achieving gender equality in leadership gender equality in leadership could add $12 trillion to global GDP by 2025. So that means we improve the economy, both men and women together when they are trained very well. But somehow women leadership is not going on that very well in all parts of the world. Maybe in the metro cities, main cities, it's good. But when you take the towns, I'm from India. You have 1,100,000 villages in our place, but we have only 4 metro cities. These concepts of gender equality, women coming to leadership, are happening only in 800 towns and in 4 metro cities, but not in 1,100,000 villages. So this education, what we are talking about on women getting education on leadership formally for professional world. They are already leaders. Naturally, they are leaders. They are leaders at home. They developed us. Hope all of you agree. I think mothers are conflict managers. Mothers are guest relation officers. Mothers are HR managers of the family. Mothers are the economic head of the family, even though our fathers are earning, sometimes home supported by moms also. But then they manage the finance very well. They can save money very well. So they know the nuances. But they may not be equally very good as far as presenting themselves in the professional world or in the world, like in great forums. They need training. Initially, there were times only they were dedicating themselves in developing a family. We agree with that. Even now, all our countries, we love a mom being there at family. But nowadays, it's not the same. Like these days, with generative AI and robots coming in, most of mom's job, but for the emotional support and things, most of mom's job, whatever she was doing, cleaning, sweeping, swapping, washing, everything, you have robots coming in, you have help coming in. But then now they are free, they can be educated. Why they need to be educated? Why not they be directly taken in? Because there are no much of education available according to their thing. They are taking care of the kids. We need to have a flexible learning come training system. We need to have continuous education. Most of the women whom I know, like I'm talking about my country, like engineers, after getting graduated, after getting into the best of the best jobs, they just get down and then start taking care of the family, their new family. They don't anymore go to work. Their skills are there. Their talents can be utilized. So what kind of system will help them? If the training is a flexible training, if they can learn from anywhere, if they can work from anywhere, some flexibility should be there for moms, but we all want the family system also to be good. So that is one thing. So a training program like that. And these days, AI is helping in so many ways. We can include it, and then we can make the training programs available at every home, not just in universities, not just in classrooms. Now learning can happen everywhere. And then, yes, definitely, I would agree in one way that should be in epigenetic factors also. At least for 2 to 3 generations, we need to get ourselves trained well. I'm not talking about metro city women. I'm not talking about women in town. I'm talking about each and every woman in villages. It takes at least 1 more generation for them to get themselves trained very well, to come to the council, to come to the town leadership, to come to country leadership. We need to start somewhere. We need to start making it happen very, very fast. And one more point to add, naturally, they are peacemakers. How many of you agree that? Naturally, they love peace. They can, yeah, major extent, yes. Yeah. And that means that they can reduce the expenses when it comes to conflicts. The world is spending, especially, okay, not just my country, on an average, we spend around minimum of 16% of the budget every year on peacemaking. on protecting the borders, on taking care of war and other things. Minimum of 16% every country spends. Their budget is like that. So we are spending much of amount on this. Women, when they come to leadership, I hope they will work more on peace, not spending on this, but spending more on health and poverty and other things. And 6 million people die every year because of malnutrition across the globe. Only in India, 2 million people die because of malnutrition. These things, our expenses need to happen in these places to feed them well, to take care of their nutritious food, not on war and other things. I definitely think women as leaders will be able to contribute more in these things. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Devakanni, thank you very much, because you have reminded us that although we are, of course, talking about a general humanity, but the problems that women face throughout the world are diverse, and especially in the global south. So we have to take that into account when we are talking about leadership and education. Thank you very much. And would you like to present now, or maybe? Oh, okay. So let's have Mila POPOVICH. Or would you like, because she has been waiting. Okay. So Mila POPOVICH, would you like to present now, please?
This is Mila, right here.
Oh, sorry.
This is
Oh,
Mila.
sorry.
No, that's
I'm
okay.
sorry. I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay, I can go ahead.
Okay, please.
Thank you.
Please.
So I want to say hello to all of you, and this is such a pleasure to see how many men stayed. It's such a pleasure to see how many women stayed. So my opening remarks come out with you like this. I am sure you're sitting in your seat with a certain set of expectations to see these renowned names, or somehow these names that make them experts or leaders that are here on this stage. And whether you would like to be here or whether you would like to learn something from us, I'm sure you are asking yourself now, so who are you? Right? I'm sure you're asking, who are you? Besides the name and the title that you got from me, who are you and what makes you a leader on leadership to tell me what it is I need to do to lead my life to a certain goal, right? Yes or no? I'm sure you came here to figure something out about your own life or to get inspired, which still means to take something from here that will be inspiring or moving and valuable to your own life. These are the questions that I explore with young people in Montenegro and USA. Half of my life, I've lived in USA, in Denver, Colorado, the other half in Montenegro, where I'm currently taking on this role as the Director General, where I opened up a whole new institution that I would like to mention. In terms of leadership and what is it that we're leading in Montenegro with this new institution that's called Directorate for Interculturalism. So what makes me a leader? Man, that's the question. The same question I asked of you, I ask myself every day, is a bunch of responsibilities, an enormous amount of responsibilities for yourself and for many people that are dependent on you. This is why, on the one hand, Joe will speak about the macro, big framework and say, globally, our leadership has failed. And Devakanni will speak on the micro level of a family and ask, what does it take for a woman to run a family and lead the family? On both ends of those issues or fields or domains, the question remains, what kind of capacities do you need to manage your private domain, your professional life, your social life, all of your relationships? My God, it's a maddening world. You agree? So I come to you first as a human being, as Joe mentioned, and a human being that takes on willingly many responsibilities for self and others, and the domain in which one functions in all of your systems and your areas, from home to university to work to to friends, to you name it. So leadership comes with an enormous amount of responsibility. I am particularly interested, so to answer Joe's questions, but to also lead the conversation forward. Joe stated that by the state of affairs in the world, the leadership has failed us. I am the first woman here to say that patriarchy has accomplished a lot of amazing things. Let's be balanced here, and let's not alienate our men. As much as the system of dominance has dominated over women, it has equally destroyed our men as war bodies, as production bodies, where if they're not potent, they're not valued. For the same qualities that they have, good qualities that they have, the system has used and abused them and turned us against each other. Not a good thing to do, and not a healthy thing for men either. So let's recognize that first. That does not do away with the issues, historical track of what women have endured over centuries. So I will speak now to why we have come to this stage globally, as well as privately and intimately, as these two wonderful women staged that for me, between global macro scale and micro scale. Because all our systems, and I mean educational, social, financial, military, economic, all monetary, all our systems have been built on biosocial conflict. What does that mean? That means that by system of dominance and exploitation, men, or man as human, rules over nature. One gender rules over and exploits another. One nation rules over another. One region over another. One species over another. It's a vicious cycle of dominance, abuse, and exploitation. That's what all our systems are built on. All. So what do? How do we heal the biosocial conflict? And it will be by the same questioning of what leads you in your life, how you lead your life. Okay? These questions of values and beliefs that are inbuilt in our systems is what we're going to need to ask of ourselves, and the kind of responsibility to transform our consciousness and our conscience to build different systems, different ethical, aesthetic, and ecological code for our future. And everything hinges on our agreement, on our new social contract of what is valuable to us, that makes life worth living, that determines the price of everything. This is what's going to determine even the relationship between genders, between species, between human and nature, between public domain, political domain, professional domain. Everything will be shifting. And this is exactly the question of what leads you, what should lead us personally and collectively. So these are the key times for values. These are the key times for asking where our values lie, because that's the only thing that will energize us to take on the responsibility to live a dignified life and to make a contribution, to be significant, to make a life worth living, to make meaning out of the state of affairs. So the root cause, and this kind of explains and answers the question of what kind of leadership we need, as well as the education. First of all, the education, as you already know, is such in this technological era that you can open up your phone and collect information massively, collective information. But how you make meaning out of that information depends on your values that are the only filter that picks and chooses content, that makes connections that are meaningful through that content, that chooses to be a consumer only or a creator that offers something through technology in that social media domain, if that's the technology we're discussing. But most importantly, the education is going to be self-guided. The question is, what kind of values are going to guide our educational systems and all of our relations to balance ourselves, transform ourselves internally in order to lead to collective transformation? And to round off here is by saying that, as you see, I'm not speaking about women only. Because if your only identity is that you're a woman, then we live in a bipolar world. That was a smug comment, right? We are disordered. It's a very narrow world of polarity. Being a woman, which I feel as a woman, I was born biologically female, I feel as a woman, but is only one aspect of my identity. And I could tell you that there's a full spectrum of my identities at play. And this is my recommendation to you. As students, as professionals, as human beings in all your relations, as leaders in your life, and hopefully with tremendous responsibility to help lead others and sustain them in the world as a fellow human. Please work on the full spectrum of your capacities. Please unleash all of your full human potential that makes you an artist, an avid chess player, a passionate soccer player, an amazing brother, an amazing mother, scientist, artist, politician. There's so many dimensions to what ecologist, you name it, astrophysicist. There's so many dimensions to who we are, because this is the only thing that will make you ready for the future. The only thing that will make you ready for the future. An educational system cannot support you because it's belated. The education system catches up on what's being awakened amongst ourselves. So what is ahead of us is a profound cultural transformation. With the state of affairs in the world, going back to what Joe said, and with the profound responsibilities that we have in our private lives and the profound devastation that we feel in the world, because you can't be peaceful if in the global world you see your brothers and sisters suffering. You can't be immune. You can be numb or addicted to something to run away from it, but you cannot not know the demise that's going on in the world. We cannot wait for educational systems to do that. What awaits us are youth and people in the street taking leadership over their lives and their destiny because they're dissatisfied with the traditional or conventional established leadership. And they feel pushed by the responsibility from their personal domain. The question remains, who will lead that transformation? And if we're not conscious enough now to take personal responsibility from all the dimensions of our identity in an empathetic way with all of the humanity, it could be a bloodshed, or it can be a planetary party. It can be a big planetary party if through empathy and empathetic revolution, we take collective leadership to change our hearts and minds, to educate and emancipate our hearts and minds, and come together for a new social contract that will make the global shift.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mila. It's really important to use your education towards leadership and to actually, you're among the few that have access to education if you think of the problems in the world. So what needs to be done is not just think about how your education should be, but what will it lead you as leaders? So what are you going to lead? How are you going to lead this world to make a different world in the future? So I think that is one of the questions that we should explore. Now, I'm sorry for the confusion, but let's come to Professor ASSIÉ-LUMUMBA. So please.
Do you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Good afternoon there, and good morning to those who are in the same time zone. Again, my name is Indri ASSIÉ-LUMUMBA. I'm from Côte d'Ivoire. Côte d'Ivoire is a country in West Africa. It was colonized by the French. However, I have studied, although in France and Canada, I studied in my higher education level in the United States, and I have been teaching at Cornell for over 30 years now. Nevertheless, I'm very much still connected to Africa. I actually, like many people, I'm not in one space. We move back and forth. So I'm very much involved in there. A few years ago, the UNESCO Institute of Statistics, which is based at the University of Montreal, asked four scholars, led by Professor Nelly Stromquist, to study specific aspects of education globally. And my assignment in the team was to see how formal education at the tertiary level has evolved on the ground of gender. Many regions of the world, the statistics that are aggregated by region, many regions of the world since the 1970s have evolved in a direction where you have higher representation of the female population in higher education. The region of the world that has the lowest representation of the female population was the Africa south of the Sahara. And of course, the consequence is fewer women representation. But it's not simply a matter of statistics, of numbers, because there are a few parts of the world or part of Africa itself where we have higher representation of the female population for different historical, cultural, political, geopolitical reasons, the political economy of region, what I call the Southern African specificity, where you have higher proportion of the female population in the education system. With the extreme case of Lesotho, a small country within South Africa, where when you work on the main campus, you don't need to do any main research to realize that the majority of the students you see are women. 3/4, literally, is visible. However, go in a major meeting where you have the representation of the leadership of the country, of the political system, of the education system itself. This is where you have a big question. Where are all these women who have been trained for so many decades, who are overrepresented? Where are they? I actually had the opportunity of asking that question when we had a meeting in Lesotho several years ago. We did a study, several other colleagues and I, did a study commissioned by the Association of African Universities. And my own role was on gender representation. However, my colleagues asked me to present the summary of our study. And then during the one of the sessions, and we were talking about this gender representation in the education system, the Vice Chancellor then said, appropriately, our struggle here in Lesotho is to get the boys to school, all the way from elementary school to the university. But then my question was, where are those women then? On this panel, where you have a who's who in the educational leadership, the Vice Chancellor, the registrar, you name it. Why is that those women are not there? So this is going back to some of the questions that Joe asked. What happened? Why this discrepancy, even in areas where you have higher representation of women statistically in the enrollment, in the classroom, in the fields, although they are what I call disciplinary clusters by gender, where you see women congregating in some field and men in the other. And when you look at the social value attached to those fields, you can see clearly where women are in high representation, there's a lesser value in terms of the salary, prestige, and so on and so forth. So these are some of the fundamental questions that I have been grappling with in my own work. What creates that discrepancy? Why even when women achieve educationally, why they are not selected to lead? So there are specific values that are embedded in the system, reproduction. We stuck with this traditional research model of production function, where you have the input, the space where learning takes place, and then you have the output in terms of the cognitive skills, and then outcome in terms of what you do outside of the school. So the basic question of not giving the opportunity to all the young people and older people to be educated is a fundamental question. Is the most injustice that can be done to a person not to give that person the opportunity to learn, to develop to his, her, or their potential? So that's a fundamental question. One of the, when the Millennium Development Goal was about to expire, two young colleagues and I did some work asking questions on what happened and how do we envision the future. My own part of what I did for that book was to look at how the gender and access to education represented in the Millennium Development Goal. One thing that I found was that not once education for women was mentioned in terms of higher education level. Of course, if you do not give them the opportunity in the beginning, you can't expect to see them at the other end of higher education. But even if they achieve, why? So these are some of the questions, and I would like to just share with you some of where I think we could be going is to give more importance to the values education, instead of focusing only on the cognitive skill. And the values education will bring women leaders who will lead and make a difference, as opposed to some women who would excel in trying to show that they too can lead like men, to be accepted by the system. So we need to change the whole structure. We need to change the value of the system. Otherwise, you put women in the position, they will not make a difference. So we need to think of what type of education, the content of education, and how we bring that specific capacity of women to lead us differently from the home to the global system. I have mentioned in many occasions that the world we have now, with all its challenges, the issues, is a result of what humans did. If we put our mind to it, we can create a different world. And how do we use women's capacity, their perspective, to create that new world that, as the previous speaker was saying, everybody will benefit from it. So I don't know how much time, but I think I will stop here and maybe come back to address some of the questions that Joe raised earlier. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, we don't have much time, maybe just 10 minutes to devote to comments or questions, or if, maybe from the audience. We have a lot of questions that have been asked by our speakers. So you may ask more questions or you may answer them. Yeah, okay, please.
Thanks to all the speakers for an excellent panel. My question is in particular for Mila, because I think you framed very well the societal construction of patriarchy and the risks in many societies that this is continued, and it hampers the evolution of the society itself, not only the role of women. Now, in my conception, though, and I'm asking your opinion on that, the real problem of today's society is not so much patriarchy, although I'm conscious of the fact that this is a problem in many places in the world, but it is paternalism. Paternalism as the role of men that impede the access to jobs, to positions, to roles in society. So that is different from patriarchy. I wonder if, because nowadays there is a lot of polemics around this subject, especially with regard to violence against women, the non-respect towards women, I mean, their entity and their social role. So I wonder if this is for you something that derives from patriarchy or from paternalism, that is a different kind of concept.
I'll be brief because I'm really curious to hear more questions and comments. I happen to know this is a fellow being. Donato, thank you for your question. I'll be brief. You made a distinction between patriarchy as a system and paternalism as a mentality. They go hand in hand. But sometimes the patriarchal system might do good things or be driven, ambitious enough to create good things, but the mentality of paternalism, which is dominance, is the problem. Have I rephrased that well? Yes, yes. And this is why I will bring it back to that biosocial conflict that we think that we need to be exploiting and overpowering and dominating something to satisfy our needs from it. You understand? So say a paternalizing, if you want to use a mentality of a macho man or a paternalistic man, he's still a human. He has needs and aspirations, and he thinks, and he has been taught by a system that to meet those needs, you need to use, abuse, violate, dominate, and exploit somebody else for that. Whereas there could be a different system, and there was a different system. In fact, I would highly recommend the work of Riane Eisler, for example, if you've heard about the chalice and the blade, where she talks about thousands of years ago, a model that existed before this, that was the model of cooperation and why it shifted and on, so that I could keep things short. My point is following. Female and male principle are equally biological and social, meaning female and male principle are found in nature that they generate together life. In society, we have men and women, female and male power and powers, okay? If we align those well and realize that they can be complementary, not competitive, that we can complement each other in our capacities to satisfy each other's needs and create together conditions for our own individual and collective actualization, then we have a different civilization. We need each other. And I don't know if you notice in your life, but the epidemic of loneliness, 9 billion people, and we're terribly isolated, lonely, and desperate. We miss each other. We need each other, however you identify yourself. And every single one of us within ourselves has the male and female principles that are within them that need to be integrated into an integrated human being that has the capacity to relate to others well, which improves the quality of your life, which makes your life a party, and so on.
Any other questions or comments, please? Please.
So first, I'd like to thank you all for all your valuable insights. And I really question myself, as you said, because I've got a lot of identities. I'm a woman, I have a family, I have an academic identity, I am a wife, I plan to be a mother. So, and at the same time, I'm a friend, I'm a daughter, I have a lot of identities all at the same time. So I totally agree that we should really create more opportunities for women in education, and we need more women in leadership as well. But I'm afraid as a woman because I have so many identities, and I sometimes feel like all my identities are both connected and in conflict at the same time. Because I don't know, I have hard time to catch up with all these things. Do you think education can solve this very personal problem as well? I mean, if we educate women, if we educate people in general, do you think these identity conflicts, let's say, can be resolved? This question is for everyone. I know it's a big question.
Thank you, thank you. So I understood what you're saying is having multiple identities in a very complex life. What role does education play? And can it help us? I mean, I guess ultimately education is something that helps empower us, and it helps us give us direction and purpose. So, busyness in life is there for everyone, especially when you're a mother and got many kind of complex demands on your life. But education can really help you to identify and pursue your purpose and empower you with the skills to do that. So, and I think ultimately in all our lives, it's about, are we living our purpose? Whether we're men or women or whatever identity, are we living our purpose? And education can help us in that journey. Thank you.
There are 2 points I would like to say here. One is education is not happening only in the schools and colleges, it's happening at home too. So every mom should become that person who teaches gender equality to their kids, men or women, to be bold on stages, to be supportive to the women, everything. Number 2, we need to redesign the curriculum, right? So you write it, you are coming out, whoever thinks like, yes, this is not the way in which it's inspiring me, this is not making me to be a leader, then redesign the curriculum. I'm into redesigning curriculum. You need to give them enough examples. Like Saint Teresa or Wangari Maathai, who planted n number of trees, and corporate women, professionals who are world leaders. At times in my country, we are afraid to give leadership. Okay, it's not a thing, but then, yeah, to some extent, we are afraid to give. To that extent, they are very strong. Women in leadership, very strong, very, very strong. We have seen. So that means that they can be strong anywhere the moment they are given the leadership, right? So that is there with everyone, but only those women who are exposed are like that. So for them to be exposed with enough stories, enough case studies, we need to redefine the education. We need to make them to apply and see it while they are studying itself, not to wait till their after college life. While it is happening right from grade 1, we need to give them stories and opportunities, and we should make them to feel we both are equal. Let's go, let's grow together. We complement each other, not like, oh, you take care of her, you take care of her. I think we both take care of each other, right? So thank you.
I would like to add quickly, because I'm a mom and gosh, all those things. And I know what you're talking about, because there's the demands on you, like Joe was saying, from every side, and you need to give and nurture and take care of. And then you, in the midst of it all, you kind of forget who you are, where your needs are, how you to meet your needs. And you might want to go party somewhere, but you have to take care of the baby or relatives, or I mean, you name it. So what I've discovered, this is a very personal and direct advice. What I've discovered, that if I have different domains in my life, I get energized by domain hopping. That's what I call it. You shift frequencies, you play on a scale. So when I'm done studying or working at the computer, I get so restless because I'm mentally exhausted. But if I go dance, nobody can stop me. I'm like unleashed. So after dancing, I'm more willing to be with the child, especially if you dance with a child as well. So you keep going like that. And after all of that, you sit with a friend or with mom. If you have a whole constellation of domains that you build for yourself, you are skilled, equipped for life, educated, have more relations, have capacity to regenerate energy from domain hopping. Okay, that's a personal advice. That's a transformational leader's advice, just so you know. And the second thing is, when we talk about education, is that we are mixing that with education that promises a place in society, and it's about employability. So now you want to be maybe with your family, but you have to finish school because that'll give you a job, and all of that. I'm sorry to tell you guys, I have a 25-year-old and a 24 and 22 5-year-old boy and a girl. God has blessed me with both, and they taught me many, many lessons. They taught me many lessons, okay? So my son, who got educated in US, ended up with $30,000 student loans. I'm intentionally sharing all of this with you. This is leadership, authentic, genuine, human. So you ask me how you did it. That's what I'm saying. This is how I did it. This is how I took care of the life of my children, of my students, of my colleagues. This is what makes me a leader. I paid a high price for it. So my son ended up with this much debt after being a great student and finishing school double track in 3 years. The job he got, when he paid off the loans, he looked at me at 22. He was ahead of his time. He said, "Is this it? Is this it? This is what you promised me as a mom, as an adult, as a parent? This is what the society, this is it?" And I said, "I'm sorry, for now it is." The point is that the jobs are changing. The world is changing, living at times of the radical uncertainty. Develop your human capacities. Develop your capacity for solidarity and connection with others at times when technology is separating us, so that we can survive, have good quality of life, feel better, domain hop, be a trickster. That's my message.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm afraid we are out of time. because the next panel is going to start here. Thank you all.